Hello, I'm Tracy Savage, and here's what's happening in the news today. The big three automakers today reported car sales for early December were up 20% from the same period last year. Chrysler led the pack. Car sales at the number 3 automaker rose more than 28%. Sales at Ford were up more than 21%, and at General Motors, sales were up nearly 18%. A possible sign GM has begun to shrug off the effects of its recent strikes. But car sales are not the only things causing smiles tonight. The government reports the U.S. retail sales as a whole were up nearly 2% in November. That's the biggest one-month increase since April. Every major area of sales, including department stores, went from the minus to the plus column from October to November. This report is very encouraging because if Christmas selling is successful in a big way, it could make up for several months of poor sales. Well, word from Washington today, Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger has finally agreed to reduce his request for military spending in the coming year. Administration sources say Weinberger has agreed to cuts totaling several $billions. Weinberger had to fall in line if President Reagan was to meet his goal of keeping the coming budget at the same levels as this year's. Where's Weinberger doing his carving? Well, one word is it'll cancel a military pay raise scheduled for next October. Finally, after 13 false starts, the U.S. government was able to launch a new weather satellite today. The final countdown was at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. This new weather satellite cost $56 million. It's not one of those devices designed to take pictures and feed them back to the Earth. This one is to relay information back to Earth on solar cycles in hopes that better long-range weather forecasting will be possible. Our next story has been news so many times that perhaps to some it's not news. But for Elizabeth Taylor followers, there's word today that the actress plans to marry for the 8th time. Film executive Dennis Stein will have the supporting role as groom in the upcoming wedding. He gave Taylor a 20-carat oval sapphire ring and an expensive pearl and platinum watch to start their engagement. Before this commitment, the groom-to-be says he has dated 3 Miss Americas, 2 Miss Israels, and 1 Miss New York State. I'll be back with more news after these messages. In Detroit, the Southeastern Michigan Transportation Authority has come to the rescue of downtown merchants this holiday season. Today, SEMTA started a free shuttle bus service to transport pedestrians safely around the People Mover construction activity. The service will run Monday through Saturday from 10 o'clock until 4 in the afternoon and is in response to merchants along Washington Boulevard and Detroit City Council who complain that the closing of State Street for the Mover project hurts businesses. Karen Norman of Detroit, her name has become a rallying cry for many feminists across the United States. Norman killed a man she says was raping her. Prosecutors say it was a case of simple murder. Today, the first witnesses took the stand in Detroit Recorder's Court. Prosecutor Diane Odrabina immediately began to discredit Norman's story of rape. Prosecutor Odrabina put an assistant medical examiner on the stand who testified that there was no evidence on the dead man's body of a struggle. Prosecutors apparently plan to try and prove that Norman stabbed the man in his sleep. He was found naked with more than 30 stab wounds in his body in Karen Norman's bedroom. Marjorie Cohen, Norman's lawyer, says her client is being victimized by the legal system. Norman defends herself against rape, Cohen says, and is put on trial for murder. Well, it's cold and flu season again, but medical experts say those aren't the only illnesses to worry about this year. Whooping cough, a disease that's totally preventable, could once again threaten our children, simply because the supply of vaccine against the deadly disease is threatened. And here's why. The controversial DPT vaccine has been linked to harmful side effects, even brain damage in a small percentage of children given the inoculation. But that small percentage has grown into massive lawsuits for the producers of DPD, forcing 2 of the companies that make it to stop, leaving only the Lead Early company to supply more than 3 million doses. Medical experts say that leaves no margin of safety should something happen to product line. Well, that's it for tonight. I'm Tracy Savage. Good night. Trouble is, even though it is the first offer in 9 months, union leadership is recommending the offer be rejected. The new contract would mean a cut in base pay to $10 an hour, but would offer pay incentives for high productivity. Sometimes it does pay to know people in high places. Less than 24 hours after artificial heart patient William Schrader complained to President Reagan that he was getting the runaround from Social Security Administration, the agency announced it's awarding Schrader his disability benefits. The problem began yesterday when Schrader received a get-well phone call from the president. During the conversation, Schrader told Mr. Reagan he had repeatedly called Social Security about his benefits, but with no results. Well, today the Social Security Administration had a sudden change of heart and said a check is now being delivered to Schrader. As an agency spokesman put it, the president had requested speedy action. Well, with just a flick of the switch, they set the nation's capital aglow last night. President and Mrs. Reagan presided at the annual Christmas lighting ceremonies. Mrs. Reagan had the honors and turned on the light that adorned the tree. The tree, donated to the Reagans by a Michigan couple, is set up between the White House and the Washington Monument. It has 1,700 lights and will use over 13,000 watts of electricity daily. Well, that's all for this evening. Good night.